Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's product showcase featuring Paul. My name is Miriam Yarda. I'm a product manager for the baby simulation team at Laerdal Medical, and I'm also a midwife, and I'll be your host today. Every year, 15 million babies are born preterm. This equals about 1 in 10 babies that require high-quality care in a uniquely complex and time-sensitive process. We believe that outcomes for premature infants can improve when healthcare providers train with lifelike simulators like our newest solution, Paul. The purpose of this webinar is to showcase our preterm simulator, Paul, with its creator, Dr. Jens Schwint. Paul is a true-to-life 27-week premature baby that was designed by medical and design experts with a focus on realistic airways based on real-life MRI scans and pathological breathing patterns. Paul also has lifelike facial and skin features with the ability to uniquely reshape neonatal simulation training. At the end of this session, we hope that you will have a good understanding of Paul. We're going to take you through the unique features of Paul, showcasing how he stands out and how he can add value to your organization. To us, Paul is not just a product, but a solution to empower neonatal care providers to excel in real-world situations. Okay, so let's get started. With me today is founder and CEO of SimCharacters, Jens. He is a pediatrician, neonatologist, and expert for neonatal simulation training. He is dedicated to patient safety and the improvement of the quality of care for preterm infants, newborns, and children. So you started SimCharacters in 2012? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, we started as a university project, actually in 2009 already.
Okay.
And I wanted to train my team at my university hospital in Vienna. I was a neonatologist at this time on a large neonatal ward. And we already did pediatric simulation and recitation training and neonatal recitation training. But we also wanted to train our team in preterm stabilization and recitation. And there was just no suitable simulator available. So we used the large mannequins, term baby mannequins, told our trainees, imagine it's a preterm of 1,000 grams, but of course that's just not possible. And so I was always unhappy that there was no solution for us neonatologists. It was far before premature end. And so we said, okay, finally, complaining is not enough. We have to do something. And so I met by chance a German special effects designer. He worked for the movie industry, of course. And I asked him if he could develop just for my training, for my ward, a preemie mannequin. And we were just thinking about a low fidelity mannequin to enable our training. And so we built a first haptic prototype. And then again, by chance, I met a biomedical engineer at my university. And that was the time when I learned that some of the smartest people in university hospitals are always in the cellar, because they are the engineers, biomedical engineers, waiting for doctors to come down to the cellar with ideas to develop products and medical devices. And so I asked the head of this team, do you think you could put all this technology in this I need for my training in this small body of a 1,000 gram baby? And he said, yeah. Why not? I can do it. And so we did it. And so we started in 2012. We finally founded the company. Of course, we got some funding, and we hired all the people, all the key people to the company. And finally, in 2017, we launched Paul at IMSH in Orlando, if I'm right. And now we have 160 units out and going more. And we are very excited about our little Paul.
That's awesome. How has your background as a neonatologist influenced Paul?
Yeah, as I said, I worked as a neonatologist on a large NICU unit, and you immediately understand that beside the pathological problem of a premature baby, the outcome of a baby depends mainly on the performance of the care team. And this is highly complex. and to take care for a preterm baby. And I saw teams failing. And I saw my team failing. I saw me failing while taking care for a preterm baby. And so I felt that this is enormously unfair for the baby, for the family, and for the healthcare professionals, because modern medicine brings everyday healthcare professionals in situations they can't handle without training. And so I said, okay, we need to change this. We need to train how to take care for these preterm babies and to improve their outcomes.
Thank you for sharing that. It's fascinating how you originally saw a gap from your clinical experience and grew that opportunity into what led us here today. In your mind, what makes Paul so unique?
Yeah, as I said, we started to develop Paul in 2009, and that was the same time when we actually started in my hospital this new LISA approach, less invasive surfactant administration. That means that we stopped to intubate the babies directly after birth in the delivery room, especially preterm babies below 28 weeks. But we put them on CPAP and put a super small, super tiny feeding tube into their trachea while the baby was spontaneously breathing. And we administered the surfactant while the baby is spontaneously breathing. And they also breathe afterwards spontaneously. So most of the babies you don't have to intubate, especially not in the delivery room. And a lot of them also are not in the course of the next weeks on the NICU ward. And so this is a very new approach. And we immediately understood at my hospital that if we want to follow this approach, we have to train all our team members. And so it was totally clear that we need to develop a simulator with a super realistic outer appearance, but also especially with a super realistic internal anatomy, especially regarding the airway. And so to enable teams to train, of course, this new technique, but all other stabilization techniques in neonatology.
Thank you. And what makes Paul stand out with the LISA technique?
Yeah, it's of course the airway, and we took MRI scans to develop this airway, transferred this data to printable data, and printed the molds for the airway in 3D printing. And this led to this super realistic airway, but LISA is more than putting just a feeding tube into a trachea, because some of the babies deteriorate under this procedure, and so you need a simulator that's spontaneously breathing. So if a baby deteriorates under this procedure, the baby may stop breathing. So you have to maybe ventilate the baby for a short time or increase just the PEEP. And so you need for really realistic simulation training, you need a preterm high fidelity simulator.
That makes so much sense. Thank you for explaining that. We're extremely lucky today because we have Paul set up right in front of us. And of course, Jens, to take us through some of his features. But before we start, I think he's looking a little bit cold.
Yes, please cover him a little bit, and especially his private parts.
Of course. Now, you mentioned realistic features. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we put a lot of efforts into details, of course. So we wanted to have a highly realistic outer appearance. So, of course, we wanted to have a simulator with real hair, and we put a lot of efforts in every detail regarding his skin. And of course, we wanted to have a completely wireless simulator. Okay. So you see him breathing, but he's completely wireless. So you see his normal breathing pattern.
I can see that,
I can actually already change this a little bit to an RDS. So you see that this breathing pattern changes. Yeah, you can hear him grunting, and everything is, of course, completely wireless. So you can take him around in this situation. So especially for transportation scenarios, of course, it makes a lot of sense. His weight is realistic. It's 1 kilo for a 27-weeker, 27 plus 3 to be precise. Yeah, a realistic weight and a very realistic outer appearance. But also, especially the internal anatomy was super important for us.
Thank you. One thing you mentioned was the 3D printed airways based on real life MRI scans of preterm infants. Is this because airway management is so important for preterm infants?
Yes, of course, airway management is key in the stabilization, but also, of course, in the resuscitation of preterm babies. And so we put a lot of efforts into this. Yeah.
Are you able to demonstrate for us?
Yes, of course, sure. So I will turn him a little bit around. So, thank you so much. And yeah, and you can see his airway, and our aim was to develop the most realistic airway in a patient simulator. And I think our developers did a good job. Yeah. So neonatologists and RTs love his airway. And if you intubate him, of course, you can see the tube going inside over there. Yeah, and it feels very natural, and you see it looks super realistic with all the moist. Yeah, and of course you can do oral intubation, but you can also do what's mainly done in most of the European countries. You also can do nasal intubation. So both nostrils, of course, are open, are patterned, and so if you intubate him nasally, you can see the tube coming here. And now normally you would use, thank you so much, normally you would use a McGill forceps to insert the tube into the trachea. Yeah, and you can do this, of course, also with Paul, so both is possible.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that demonstration. I really like how realistic his vocal cords looked. I think usually we would have, or they're usually painted on and they're white, but you can see from that demonstration that it's quite lifelike and they're more translucent looking.
So babies don't have white vocal cords.
Exactly. So that makes it more realistic. I know for intubation training, it can be quite difficult to do the technique correctly. Are you able to show us how to do that on Paul, and in terms of his sensors and the feedback, and what's the benefit of having those?
So let's intubate him again.
Okay.
Thank you, Miriam. And yeah, we focused a lot of sensors because, of course, failing is so easy in a preterm baby. Everything is so small and tiny. And so we put a lot of sensors in Paul. And if we intubate him again, you can see again the airway.
Oh,
and if we place a tube again, you can see the tube going in over here. But you can also see it on the user interface. And so I just stop his spontaneous breathing for a second. It's not so nice to be intubated while spontaneously breathing. But what you can see here is that I was a little bit too excited about my intubation, so I ended up in the right main stem. That means that the left lung collapses automatically. And if the trainees, do we have a bag somewhere?
Yes, I can get that for you.
So if we ventilate, or the trainees ventilate Paul now, what they will see that it's just the right chest that's moving and the left chest isn't moving. Yeah, and you can also see this, of course, on the user interface. And hopefully somebody in the team will recognize that the tube is the problem. Pull the tube out a little bit, and normally you should hold it, of course. Pull the tube out a little bit, and you see both lungs and also the left lung reinflates again. And if the trainees now ventilate Paul, what they will see is that both chests move again. Yeah.
Okay, I see
so
that.
we have sensors in the trachea. Of course, we also have sensors in the esophagus. So let's intubate him again. So if the team believes, while intubating, that this is the esophagus, not here. This is the trachea, of course, and if they believe the esophagus is the trachea, and they intubate Paul into the esophagus, you will see on the user interface, or the instructors will see on the user interface, that the esophagus is getting red, the stomach is getting red, and if the trainees now ventilate Paul, what they will see is that it's the belly that's moving, and you also hear a little bit of leakage sound, and the chest isn't moving, So we have sensors in the trachea, esophagus. However, for me, the most important sensor is the sensor for head position. So I love intubations, but I believe ventilation skills are a lot more important than intubation skills.
Okay.
And so for Paul, we developed a sensor for the head position, so you can always see the current head position or the instructor team can always see it. And of course, head position impacts ventilations. So if you maybe want to ventilate Paul now with the Neopuff system.
Perfect. And then we'll just turn on the Neopuff system.
Yeah. And please deliberately overextend or hyperextend Paul's head. And this happens fairly often during newborn stabilization. So now you can see on the screen that the head is now in the red position, and what you see is, if you ventilate him now, that you have no air entry into the lungs. Okay. And you also see now the neopuff, because we are using a neopuff system. And if what the trainees now have to do is they have to find the sweet spot, so the neutral position, and as soon as they find it, you see that now the chest starts moving.
Oh yeah, I see that.
And as Paul is a high fidelity simulator, we can start a program now. So we can start, if you just stop for a second, we can start this auto distension program. So we click here on auto, and please ventilate Paul again deliberately with a hyper extended head position. Okay. And what you see now is, we have no air entry into the lung, but what happens now is we have an air entry into the stomach. And you see, your mannequin, you see that Paul's belly is moving, gets more and more filled with air. You see at the same time the compliance of the lung changes, so the lung gets stiffer and stiffer. And so, of course, we're in the middle of a training scenario. So you can drop the saturation, and the trainees will see that Paul is getting cyanotic. We can drop the heart rate, and hopefully somebody in the team will recognize that the stomach is the problem actually, and the wrong head position. We'll draw the air out with a NG tube. If the trainees do this, and just stop for a moment, you can click on deflate, and you will see that the belly goes down, air goes out, the compliance normalizes. You can normalize the heart rate and the saturation. Hopefully the trainees will ventilate him correctly now in the right head position, and will have an air entry. And if they do it correctly, of course, we can start his spontaneous breathing again, and eventually Paul will also start crying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the problem is solved.
That is fantastic. I really like getting that visual cue that something is wrong and that I have to change and adjust my practice. It's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that demonstration. It's very clear that the sensors that Paul has are very beneficial to the instructor or facilitator. Can you tell us a little bit more about the operating system?
Yeah, sure. So what we tried is we wanted to have a easy to use user interface. And so when you buy a new phone, you don't want to read a user manual. So it should be easy to understand and easy to use. And for our user interface, we have at least 3 columns, I would say. So with this left area, this large area with a real-time 3D animation of the simulator. And you saw it before that all the measurements you do on Paul, you will see in this area. In this left lower area, you see all these green arrows. That means your system is always working. Everything is working properly in your system. In this middle upper area, we have the pre-programmed symptom complexes, like you already saw the RDS, but we can also turn on the neck for a moment, the NEC for a moment, the necrotizing enterocolitis. And so you will see that Paul's belly gets distended. You see that his breathing went a little bit more shallow. The compliance of the lung changed again. So Paul comes with some pre-programmed symptom complexes. Of course, the large area or this area for the sounds, we'll talk a little later again about it. This large area for the lung, where you can on the fly change the compliance of the lung. In this middle lower area, the integrated debriefing system, and of course self-explaining right upper area, the vital screen, where you can change the vitals, of course, and an area to pre-program to pre-program scenarios. So we don't have many sub-menus. So most of the features you need are on one screen.
Okay. And in terms of the monitor, the patient monitor, is that the only option we've got?
No. I think for doctors, it's often not so relevant how the monitor looks like, but for nurses, it's super important. And I think it impacts the simulation if you believe, that's not my monitor. I don't feel very comfortable with the monitor. And so what you see now, that's a Draeger layout, a typical Draeger layout. But you can switch this for example, to a Philips layout.
And that's what I'm used to seeing.
Just one click. And you have a Philips layout. And if a team is only using for simulation, for example, or in the obstetric, in the delivery room, only a pulse oximetry, you can switch instantly to a pulse oximetry. And maybe one more thing, a feature I like very much, is our feedback monitor. And this is only for the orientation phase. Okay. So I believe if people are better prepared for the scenario, this will be easier for them. And so we have this feedback monitor for the orientation phase, and this feedback monitor can be displayed on your vital screen. And so the trainees will immediately understand that head position is important. They will see how the head position impacts their ventilations. And as you already saw, we measure tidal volumes, peak pressures and ventilatory rates. So during the orientation phase, they are perfectly prepared for the scenario afterwards.
Thank you. That seems very helpful. One last thing I thought that was quite unique about Paul was his stethoscope. This is not your average stethoscope, is it?
No.
Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes, of course. So Paul comes with his own stethoscope, like all preemies have their own stethoscope on their position in the hospital. And the thing was, when we did training with other simulators, the participants were always complaining about technical noises or sounds, strange sounds. And of course, auscultation in a simulator is always a challenge. And so we decided to go a different way, and we have no speakers in Paul, but we have sensors in Paul, and the sensors detect where the stethoscope is placed, and the sound is generated according to the site where you place the stethoscope in the stethoscope. And so you have pure lung sounds, pure heart sounds, pure bowel sounds. So if you want to try, so if you place it in the middle, you will hear the heart sounds. On the right and on the left, you will hear the lung sounds. Yeah. And the cool thing is you can always see the stethoscope on the screen, so you always know if your trainees hear something. Yeah, you can also listen to bowel sounds. And if they enter an area or they place it in an area where we have no sensors, you would not see the stethoscope on the screen. And so you know they don't hear anything. And before they start to make up their own sounds, what they tend to do in simulation scenarios, you can help them and tell them, no, the lung is the same on both sides. And of course, you can change the sounds. So for example, we have a library of different sounds, and we record this from real babies. And as soon as we have a no sound, we integrate it into the library. So these are the sounds for the lungs. So we have a classical BPD sound, a CPAP sound, or if I change this to a high frequency oscillator, and if you want to listen again, now you will. It's a little bit strange because Paul is not shaking now, but if you listen to the lung now again, you will hear the high frequency oscillator. Yeah.
It's a very strange sound.
Yeah, I know, and I will change it back again to a normal lung sound. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Sounds better.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. It's very good quality, though, with the sound. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Jens, is there any other features you'd like to highlight about Paul today?
I think we covered most of the features. Maybe the last feature, so we really appreciate the feedback of our customers. And so we built in a feedback system into the user interface. And so if you want to shut down the system, you have to rate him. It's not possible to shut down the system without rating Paul's performance. Yeah, and the idea is we can retrieve all this feedback. And if I retrieve this feedback and if I see that you always give Paul only 1 star, I will call you and ask what the problem is with Paul. So you have to rate him. And what you can do, actually, you can add some feedback, some direct feedback to us. And the idea was, I believe, after training, if the training is over, you have some ideas in mind, some ideas for improvements or what you want to tell us. And then you go back to your ward and you are immediately drawn in your work. and you will never write an email. And so we thought, okay, it makes sense that customers can send us some feedback. So they just type in the feedback, and as most of our simulators are not online, they can click on send with QR code, scan the QR code with their mobile phone, and they can send us immediate feedback. And as I said, we highly appreciate the feedback of our customers because we want to make Paul always better and better.
Okay, that's wonderful that you take customer feedback so positively. That's great. It's been wonderful to get to know Paul and to understand a bit more about his features. We're so grateful for your dedication and hard work to improving the quality of care for critically ill, preterm, and newborn babies. What is next for Sim Characters?
What is next for Sim Characters? Yeah, some have already heard about it. So our next simulator is just around the corner. It's Emily and Emma with different skin tones, and they will be term baby simulators. And as Paul, everything about Paul was around stabilization of preterm babies. Now the overall learning goal for Emily and Emma will be newborn resuscitation with a lot of new features and very exciting features from my point of view. So it will be possible, for example, to place chest tubes. We will have an anatomically correct tibia for placing intraosseous successes. So a lot of new features, and we are very excited about these 2 new simulators.
Sounds very exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing more about them. That's very good. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and hope that this was a valuable experience for you. If you have any further questions or need more information, please feel free to contact us or visit our website. Thank you again.